In the not-too-distant future, a revolution is brewing, one that will change the very fabric of our existence. It's a tale of cells that hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of life itself. Let us venture into the unknown, for in this age of stem cells, anything is possible.
I've seen some beautiful flowers.
Jan, you are going to have to lead the conversation today because I think I've been around children for so long that I've lost the ability to have an adult conversation. Welcome back.
You have coffee now. We can do this.
Welcome back to Stem Cell Revolution. And here we are. For those of you who thought we disappeared for good, so sorry.
We're back. We needed a
better
little
than
summer
ever.
break. Yes, we needed a summer break. We got it. We had delightful family time. Here in Houston, our kids are all, for the most part, back in school this week. So we have coffee.
Much needed.
And a lot of excitement. A lot of excitement. But
Well, we finished construction, so we're back in our old room.
Yes.
You probably will not notice that anything has changed in this glass room, but I can assure you we have got new floors, new lights.
We have new everything, and super excited for, when we unveil the rest of the building in the months to come. We are so close to being finished, and the added capacity, I think everybody's really going to enjoy it. It's fantastic, and we're getting great feedback so far because miracle upon miracles, we had no impact to services provided, patients seen during this period. So thank you to everyone who's come by, and we look forward to welcoming even more soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good. But today we wanted to talk more. We've talked about this before. We've talked about this before on the podcast about how to discern the validity of a cellular therapeutic, of a stem cell therapy, of how to evaluate any one of these companies that may be coming across social media or websites, or you're hearing about from a friend or even a physician claiming to offer cellular therapeutics with particular benefits.
Don't believe anything.
Well, a lot of times when we're sick and maybe even desperate, that might be the right word. A lot of times we will, when we're really searching for hope. And these are important conversations. And so I think that not only to revisit them, but to revisit them in increasing detail, increasing depth, and answering questions that we receive in real life, face-to-face conversations here in the office all the time.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that more today, about some different language, some different verbiage, what we can look for when discerning the validity of a stem cell company and a cellular therapeutic. So let's get into it.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Let's start here. You become aware of a company claiming to offer stem cell services or cellular therapeutics or some combination of both. Run me through the first questions. You've never heard of this company before. You know nothing about it.
Well, and you probably don't know anything about stem cells, right? So there is, of course, an increasing popularity with awareness of what stem cells are and what they can do, and people traveling overseas, and of course you have celebrities and athletes going all over the place to get stem cells, and they're talking about their experiences, podcast stars. I mean, it just, the list goes on. And so the more you hear about this, the great thing is that the public perception of stem cells has definitely shifted. From the time, I would say 90s into early 2000s, you still had a lot of pushback. There were some major stem cell scandals, particularly overseas. In South Korea, there was a big one involving embryonic stem cells. And all of this kind of led to a general feeling that stem cells are not good, they're not safe, they're not ethical. And so there was that. But again, with the popularity today, and also with this idea of wanting to pursue more natural healing and I think stepping away from traditional pharmaceuticals or more symptom management, people wanting to go more the holistic route and find better options, have been all sort of leaning their way towards stem cells. And so because of that, in the woodwork, you have many stem cell specialists and companies and doctors' practices that are popping up everywhere. And so if you didn't know anything about cells, well, first, if you don't know anything about stem cells, you have to get educated on stem cells before you can ask the right question. So I would say start there. If you'd like a great resource, we do have other videos on our channel, and we make things like what are stem cells, super basic. What are stem cells that are really just to give you a background on biologically what stem cells are. And once you understand that, it will help you ask the right questions. So I'm not telling you to watch the video to sell you anything. It's just really basics. It's one of the most popular YouTube videos out there on basic stem cell education. So I'd say watch a video or two on that. And then yeah, I think I made the joke, don't believe in anything. Well, I think that's a good approach to have. Be skeptical about everything. And so ask all of the questions that we're going to lay out today and make sure you're satisfied with the answers. And again, if you know a little bit more about stem cells, you will understand when you're satisfied. I know we might feel a little bit uncomfortable with the science and how am I going to know, but you'll know because we'll kind of go through each one step by step for you. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I will shamelessly plug our Stem Cells for Kindergartners or Stem Cells 101. Yeah. We had your beautiful daughter on, and we talked to her about stem cells, last year and had a very fruitful conversation. So the science can be overwhelming at first, but again, we can assure you it's not. And also a credible resource will be able to explain the science to you in plain language in a way that you can understand without a scientific background.
And I do want to say, like a conversation with a 5-year-old about what stem cells are, as silly as that might be, it at least is able to explain what they are and delineate what they aren't, because that's the primary problem with salespeople, stem cell salespeople. They're going to sell you on what cells are and what their cells can do. And it's just simply not true. So once you understand what stem cells really are, then you'll be able to, at least your spidey sense will go up and you'll know that, okay, I'm being sold something that isn't true. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So with that kind of basic, foundation, if you approach a company, whether in person or you're learning more or you're doing research, what are the top questions that you ask that occur to you to dig and find answers to evaluate their validity, their credibility?
So the first thing I'd ask are, what kind of stem cells are these? Okay, now we are gonna bypass majority of the regulatory conversation because we're gonna run under the assumption that you might be dealing with a foreign clinic. Like, let's just pretend that there's no regulatory rules here. We're just gonna go by science and medicine. What specific stem cell type is this? Okay. I would say if you find yourself in a regular, in a doctor's office, let's say in the United States, chances are they're going to be selling you something that's off the shelf or something that's more of a same-day procedure where they remove blood or tissue from you, spin it down, process it minimally, and give it right back. In that instance, it's a mixed cell population. So they should be able to tell you that. Is it a mixed population or is it a pure population? Is it a single homogeneous? Like, are all the cells that I'm receiving going to be the same? They should be able to answer that question. And if they give you kind of a runaround answer like, well, we use this kind of a process and it kind of runs around, then you could be a little suspicious that first, even though, for instance, we have a process where we know exactly what cells we're isolating, we also have to measure that. The FDA doesn't just say, okay, as long as you're doing this, this will fly. You actually have to measure this at every lot release so that they should be able to tell you and show you definitively, this is the population of cells that we're giving you.
Yeah. The quality testing is certainly a point of differentiation, I think, between companies. And I would think, along with the type of cell, it's where do these cells come from?
Well, okay, I want to actually go back to what type of cell is this, because you have to go into the doctor's office knowing what cell you want. All right, I think that's very important. You don't want to be sold on what cell you need. You should go in knowing what cell you are looking for. And it's highly dependent on what kind of condition you have and the data that supports that. So there needs to be some level of homework done on that before you walk into a doctor's office.
Now, do you think that the level of homework on the patient side is more or less or comparable to the level of homework we hope anyone would do in the process of seeking care for a more conventional treatment or therapeutic?
Oh, goodness. In what lifetime have you done homework on any drug before you go to the doctor's office? Doctor tells you need this. Have you ever even questioned what that is? I don't think I've had a 2-minute conversation on what that is or side effects or any of that. You say, yes, sir, and you take it and you go, right? With anything. But with stem cells, again, you have to go in with some level of knowledge because the doctor can, or anyone can tell you, oh, well, we have these special proprietary cells that can do A, B, and C. Well, then how are you going to validate that? You have to know what those cells are. You have to at least know what they're talking about, what stem cell type they're talking about, right? And I think that's a given. You have to know because, for instance, we saw this in the cord blood world, right? Cord blood, at birth, they're selling cord blood banking, and what's inside cord blood are hematopoietic stem cells, which make blood. Okay. Well, if you're, I don't know, for instance, trying to repair a burn, okay, you're trying to do something topically on a burn, okay. Well, you need to regenerate skin. Those cells regenerate into blood. They won't regenerate into skin. So that's not a logical match. Okay. But how would one know this? Is if somebody's selling you just stem cells, these are great stem cells. These cells that you bank today can be used for anything later on. Well, that is definitely an oversell, but how would you know that? You have to understand what the cell does, and that's very easy to do once you get some basic knowledge on that. Because with adults, we only have really 2 main stem cell types: hematopoietic and mesenchymal. Those are the 2. So it's not very complicated. One makes blood and the other does everything else. So it's not hard to understand that, okay, for my condition, this is the specific cell type I would need.
Yeah, I think it's also helpful to know too that in this space, we say that in healthcare you always kind of have to be your own advocate. It's something you hear in a lot of environments. I think anybody who's ever been to an emergency room or has had that unfortunate experience would probably endorse that sentiment. Investigational therapeutics, including stem cell therapies, are someplace I would encourage people to know off the bat. Hey, I need to be my own advocate. I need to get my own information and do my own research, and don't be shy or hesitate to talk to companies or service providers directly and ask them your questions, because that's another red flag. If I call somebody I heard about and I start asking questions and I don't get direct answers, well, why not? This information should be readily available about what type of cell type you're working with, where these cells are coming from, how am I manufacturing them, how am I quality control testing them. So don't let the fact that it's science and biotechnology make you shy. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And this goes for doctors alike. A doctor and a lay, just because you're a medical doctor doesn't mean you know anything about stem cells. You might have learned about them for one chapter in a textbook, but we've come a long way since then. The technology is moving very quickly, and there needs to be more. I feel like, as again the field progresses, doctors will understand more about how these cells work. But right now, it's still in its infancy. So to have a physician that says really that they don't know, I think is a good indicator that they're telling you the truth than having a doctor that's just, and maybe they are so skeptical that they'll say no to everything. Like, oh, this is all unproven, which is generally true, right? Because there are no real stem cell products that are approved for the market yet. But that doesn't mean that it's completely unproven. There are many, many studies that are happening right now that are pretty groundbreaking, and I think we can collectively say is going to change the trajectory of healthcare as we see it today. Yeah. But that is still not in the mainstream. So doctors really don't have a handle on all of that yet.
Not usually. I mean, because you can't know everything about everything, right? And so a lot of the physicians we're privileged to work with have spent decades cultivating expertise in a particular area that does not include stem cell therapies. But we get calls every single week from physicians, and they come in and see the labs, and they come in and meet with us, and they say consistently, my patient brought this to my attention, and I see the peer-reviewed publications, and I see the podcasts, and I see the information, and I want to learn more about it. Teach me, tell me what you know, tell me why you believe in this technology. I would expect a company to be willing to engage with physicians in that way. To better educate physicians and patients. But again, those usually start with the patient going in and saying, this is what I'd like to have access to. Help me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Majority of the people that come here are referred by a physician. So some physician, and many are physicians we don't know. So somehow they've done some level of reading, probably read one of our papers and have sent patients this way to get more information. But yeah, I think any physician willing to learn is a good indicator that you've got a good one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there are a lot of good ones out there.
Yes, there are wonderful ones. And I think physicians and other medical providers who realize that, one thing I always look for when I'm evaluating a company's materials and you look at the claims that they're making or not making, I personally am wary of companies that are, hey, all you need is stem cells. It's at odds with conventional medicine. It's like, no, cellular therapeutics and conventional treatments, we see this every day, often work hand in hand and can be part of a comprehensive healthcare picture. And so when you see people on either sides going, hey, buy this regenerative medicine product and you'll never need conventional care, to me, that's a huge red flag.
Oh, it's a bunch of baloney. And it's the same thing with, oh, well, if you have stem cells, you're never going to need a doctor. Doctors are going to go out of business because no, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's going to be a part of medicine that we know today, right? And a combination and sometimes an adjunct tool. They have to work together. I want to give a good example of cancer therapeutics, right? For cancer, there's a need to kill cancer cells. You have to do that, right? And that means chemo, radiation, some toxic thing has to go into your body to kill the cancer cells. Well, the problem is it kills everything in its path, right? And that's why you have a lot of people saying, oh, well, I don't want chemo because I don't want it to, the chemo will eventually kill me, which is by and large, maybe, part of that is true. But if you can use cells in conjunction with that to rebuild areas that have been damaged by chemo that you don't want damaged, right? Because we still want the damage on the cancer cells, then this is how things can work together. And it may dramatically change the trajectory for cancer in the future, right? Those are exciting areas.
Yes, they're very exciting.
Yeah, the perfect marriage.
Very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a lot of promise. So when we talk to, let's go back to, so some questions we've asked, we're asking companies or service providers, what type of cell are you working for? Are you working with?
Yep.
Where are these cells coming from? What should people know? What should they put on your manufacturer hat, right? What do you wish people knew about manufacturing to help them ask the right questions about that process to discern whether they're getting a top quality control tested product?
Well, I think, Jan, before you ask about like where these things have been made, the first thing you do is ask about the cells, because that will become the logical next question, right? For example, if a doctor tells you, "Oh, I've got stem cells stocked in my freezer," well, then you would ask, like, "Okay, where'd they come from?" Like, and how do you know they're alive, right? Those are the next logical things. So, going back, I would first make sure that the cell type is clearly defined. You should know exactly what that is. And if you can get a piece of paper, can I get a sample report of what I'm receiving? I'd like to see that. You get an idea of what kind of cell type. The cell source. So where do the cells come from? Obviously, if the doctor is saying, we're going to take some tissue from you, that means the cells are coming from you. That's easy. If the cells are coming from not you, then there's a whole slew of questions that come along with that, right? Because you want to know, well, who did this come from? And is it really safe? How do you know that this testing has been done? This then comes to the other question of, well, then where did they come? So if they're not made by you, right? If you got them from some donor, then where is all of that information? In the United States, to use somebody else's cells requires a whole gamut of testing. Okay, this starts with donor selection, and this is all written in our laws, regulatory FDA laws, on how to choose the appropriate donor, how to consent that donor, how to get that donor's tissue, what kind of testing, blood testing, as well as screening has to take place. All of this is clearly laid out. So in the US, there are defined rules. So you can feel, so long as you then know who the manufacturer is and you look up that manufacturer and see that they're a reputable manufacturer, then you can feel rest assured that this donor product has been tested appropriately. FDA does require that companies that collect these sorts of tissues are registered. So FDA knows where all of these, so that they can go in for random inspections and things like that. So that's how you would know. Foreign clinics, this is very difficult to assess. You are literally going off the word of the person that's selling you. So that's really hard. Yeah. But in the US, it's a little bit different. At least we have some level of control there. Yeah.
So I'm thinking too, we're talking a little bit about, knowing something works. That's some language that's kind of creeping into our conversation. And talk to me a little bit about the difference between, hearing from a friend of a friend's cousin who had stem cells injected in a joint and it did or did not work, or reading something online on social media, versus the type of materials you would expect a reputable company to have available demonstrating the efficacy and safety of their product.
I don't know that there are many companies out there that could do that. So I think you're very limited there. So I really want to speak to the person that is looking for something now. Like, what do you do now when things are still in their infancy, right? Where a lot of data is still not there. Like, how do you choose? It's really difficult because your doctor says the same thing, right? Where's the double-blind placebo-controlled trial? Like, I need that to make a call. Think about where we were 8 years ago. You think we could even have a fruitful conversation with any doctor? Where's your phase 1? Sorry. You have to inject an animal, like what, where do you even start with that?
Well, but when I reflect on it, which is super exciting, by the way, to think about where we were 8 years ago versus today. Wow. We were able to have fruitful conversations because although those studies and that research was in its infancy and we were rolling so many boulders up the hill, we were committed to rolling those boulders up the hill, and we were committed to conducting research within an FDA framework. That's why we're here in the US, right? Was to do that work. And so we absolutely have an easier time. And I think that's appropriate now that we have increasing amounts of data every year and larger trials in different states and different places, right? Mm-hmm. It's just more information. But to me, as a patient, as a parent, as an advocate of healthcare solutions, I absolutely would look for a demonstration in a company of commitment to continued research within the FDA framework, right? Wherever it is. But if the company isn't even concerned with it, they just want to inject people with their product, that to me is a different spirit.
Well, it's like, really the difference is like buying a car without the Carfax, right? Having a institution, organization, company, whatever, go through the commitment of getting FDA authorizations to do that kind of work gives you comfort because it means that a third party has checked over all of these things, all of the things that we're talking about, so that you don't have to worry. It also allows you to be properly consented, right? Especially if you're in a clinical trial, because most of these things, if they're approved, means that they're given in a trial context. It's not like you're going there and paying money for something that is that you have no idea what it is that's being injected. You're properly consented. That way you know what the risks are. When you're being sold a stem cell product, particularly overseas, they're not sitting down with you telling you all the things that could go wrong. That's transparency, right? That's what you should be fully aware of before you step in and receive anything. That's your decision, though. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and when we talk about risks and we talk about things going wrong, mm-hmm. I can't say too often enough how strongly opposed to medical tourism I personally am, especially given the increasing access to cellular therapeutics in the United States. Because especially if we, with progressed or complex or complicated conditions, outside of the investigational product, I mean, there are risks inherent in receiving any treatment. And within the US, within the regulatory framework, you've consented to those. There's a certain amount of documentation. In a clinical trial setting, FDA has looked over the investigators who are, responsible for this trial and said, yes, we think these people have requisite or appropriate expertise to run this trial. Mm-hmm. And if you go overseas, you simply don't know. And that's not to say that everything in the U.S. is good and everything outside the U.S. is bad.
No, definitely.
That couldn't be further from the truth.
Yes.
But the fact remains, you don't know. And then you may be sick in, a foreign country, not speaking the language. What do you do? And the answer is there's not a lot that can be done for you.
I mean, what we see in the news are people that don't make it home. But what you don't see are the slew of people that a lot of people go with very serious conditions. They take a huge leap of faith and risk to get on these planes to go overseas, and complications occur all the time. This is just the reality of the conditions, the serious conditions that people have, along with giving experimental medicine, right? There are always risks. This is why FDA needs like a safety plan. We need to map out all of the emergency rooms that are near your facility and how long it would take an ambulance. They want to know everything because you need to be prepared, right? To have a good plan for anything that might happen. So yes, so many things to consider.
You know, I think the overarching question people ask before embarking on any healthcare treatment is, does it work? And with an investigational therapeutic, right, which nearly all cellular therapeutics are considered investigational in the United States right now, the answer is we're finding out. We're finding out how and why and to what extent and in what circumstances and treatment protocols. So when someone is if a patient is asking the question, hey, is there enough evidence for me to decide for myself and with my healthcare provider team that there's a high enough probability this might work for me, then what are some specific things to look for in the clinical trial context?
Oh, goodness. Well, if you're looking at the data, right, here's the data that has been compiled so far. Most of the time, stem cell companies or salespeople will rely on third-party research that's been done elsewhere, because they haven't done the research on their cells, but they claim that, oh, well, these are stem cells too, so this is all going to work together. No. The tagline at our company is not all stem cells are created equal. And the reason is because that is a true statement. You can't read between things. I mean, mechanistically, if you get down to this individual cell type, like on how a stem cell works, maybe you can derive, okay, if this goes into my body, this is what could happen. But when it comes to actual therapies that are made, so this is translation of these cells, right? Now you have clinical trials where you go into clinic and you're actually using these cells in a person, because that's really how you're going to make a decision. Like most of the time, you don't make a decision on, I'm going to get this medicine because this mouse got better, right? You use the mouse information to understand how it works. But when it comes to, do I want this for myself? You look at a clinical trial and you look at, okay, well, how many humans got better? How, like, what was the level of their improvement? These are the kinds of statistics you're looking for. So that data has to be for that product. That data can't be for a similar product or maybe a similar cell type, because they're made differently. So at the end of the day, that's how there's really limited amounts of information for a specific product. And most often, I think the products that are being at least sold in the United States don't have any such data. Very, very little. Most of the time, they're using third-party data to support what they're trying to sell.
Well, and that probably is the most, if you had to walk away with one question, that would be one I would take away is, hey, what is available specific to your product?
To your product.
Your product.
That's what I would ask for.
And then those that can provide that kind of automatically go in a different bin than those that can't, and helping you make your decision. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you had to pick one, that one stands out to me as being really practical.
I would tell you another red flag, an easy one, is if a doctor told you only need one of these injections. Like this is a great thing for you and it's going to solve all your problems, or a couple of these. That's not how this works.
They don't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
No, biologically, they don't work that way.
Because the data supports that it doesn't work that way. All right. We've seen this enough where we have a pretty good handle. Chronic degenerative diseases, by definition, means that you are chronically degenerating. Therefore, you need to regenerate in the same way you're degenerating. So the repeated treatment administration is going to be critical in treating diseases like that. But that's a reality. It's not, if you come on an airplane once a year to come visit us, we'll make this all better. No. There is a schedule component to this. We have imaged enough brains to know that there is the treatment frequency and the timing is just as important as the treatment itself. So we are learning that it's much more than just how many cells are delivered at any given time. Yeah. Yeah. But you need the data to be able to show this, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So if we're thinking about a company's capacity, an organization's capacity to provide research using their own product, right? Where would we go to get that kind of information? And I'm thinking predominantly actually of social media, because social media is such a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I think we see very positive things from patients being able to connect to each other and feel less alone with whatever challenges or struggles they're facing, and the families and caregivers, and also share information and share what they're learning as they go about potential resources. But on the other hand, wow, you don't know what you're going to get if you start going into the Google or some popular social media platforms. And I've also observed a rise of what I would consider kind of predatory influencer, I hate to use that word, presence online from salespeople or sometimes even physicians trying to speak into a space that they are not qualified.
Or being sold into. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know financially how this works, right? Why is this physician pushing this product?
Yes.
That has no data to it. Like where does this coming from? I mean, other than being in on it, I just don't know where it scientifically, medically makes sense, right? And you see a lot of that. So it's so hard I would say, please disregard the titles. Look for the data. Go back to the data. And if your doctor is selling cells that are not made by them, produced by them in their office, which that in itself is a red flag, okay? If they are not,
wonder
so
what
it's
GMP
like one or
would
the
say
other.
about that.
If it's the other, then if they're buying cells from somewhere, you have to ask where those cells are being made. Who is that manufacturer? Because then you can look up the manufacturer. You can look up how long they've been around, what they do, and at least be informed of your decision. We're not telling people you shouldn't do this or that there are no safe options. That's not true. It is, there are a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, and there are accessible trials now happening everywhere, thousands of clinical trials. You have to know where to find this. So, quick way to do this is to go on to our government website, clinicaltrials.gov. All one word, clinicaltrials.gov. If you go there, you can search your disease, and you can even search, and they have a repository of clinical trials happening all over the world. Now, in the United States, it's supposed to be vetted. Our government website is supposed to be vetted. Now, to my understanding, anytime a clinical trial is uploaded, it's supposed to be FDA authorized. We don't like to use the word FDA approved, because FDA approved we use for when it's on the market, like when a drug finally gets approved on the market. And you should also be wary of that language. If anyone is telling you, oh, this is FDA approved, no, there are hardly any there's only one stem cell product out there that's approved, at least stem cells, the kind of stem cells we're talking about. And that's for pediatric graft versus host disease. So if you're not a child in a hospital, there is no FDA approved product. So if your doctor is saying that is not the case. But on the website, you're supposed to have a list of all trials that have been FDA authorized. So they've been given the green light to proceed with these trials. Rumor has it that not all of them are FDA. So I don't know how that works, because clinicaltrials.gov requires that we send in our authorization before they upload the trial. So our experience has been that way. I don't know how other trials get on, but our government website is supposed to be a good resource for all active trials, and ones that you can look into. You can also see past trials that have finished. So maybe there are no active trials for you to get into, but at least it's a good place for you to find, oh, I wonder what happened with the results of this. I should go look that up to see if there are results somewhere or something written about it. If something is not written about it, maybe it tells you that it wasn't worth writing about. And that might also give you some information. No information gives you information. Yeah.
Yes. It absolutely does. Well, and clinicaltrials.gov listings also have points of contact. And so if you are a patient seriously considering participation in a trial, that is, those points of contact are there for a reason. Use them, reach out, ask your questions.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, you can go directly to the site and ask questions if you wanted to. Yeah, that's a in-depth level of research that I'd encourage anyone to do. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I hope this has been useful. I know it capitalizes on a lot of the things that I've been, excited to learn over the years. I'm still stuck on the fact that you said, 8 years ago, where was our research? And that's been churning in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Really incredible progress and exciting things happening and will continue to happen. But I think it's important to check back in with these foundational kind of, discernment, people-focused conversations to help everybody be part of it and know when to enter into it and how and make your own decisions about what's ideal for you.
Right. I think the bottom line is be your own advocate, be educated. This is not rocket science. Stem cells aren't. Anyone can understand what they are, what they do. They are in your body, so you should know what they can do. And there are good options available. And don't be discouraged by words like unproven. It's like, what the heck does that mean? Everything's unproven. And just because something's proven doesn't mean it's going to be proven to work for you. That is also foolish, right? Drug trials, plenty of patients it works for, and there are plenty of patients it doesn't work for. This is how it works, right? We work on statistical significance. That's not a guarantee ever. So proven and unproven, that I think is not relevant in this conversation. It is really, what is the science? And do I think that this could be of benefit to me? And knowing what the risks are. I think being an educated consumer patient is what we all need to be.
Yes.
Yeah. Public service announcement.
One podcast at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I've really enjoyed this. So thank you. And until the next one.
Yes. Until next one. Subscribe, follow us.
See you soon.
Stay tuned for more. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.